And so, many of today's scholars tend to dismiss the early stories of the Old Testament as little more than legend. Now, new archaeological discoveries could at last be bringing the stories of Genesis and Exodus out of the shadowy world of myth and back into the light of history. Egypt and the Holy Land are neighbours and have been closely related since earliest times. As we learn more about the history of one country, it promises to shed light on the history of the other. It's obvious you can't study Egypt without taking account of biblical history. I first came to Egypt as a 10-year-old, and I've been coming back ever since, piecing together the evidence for a radical new theory, which I believe is going to change our understanding of the past. I want to take you to an Egypt you won't find on a package tour. Years of study and research at the site have led me to the conclusion that in the process of dating Egyptian history, a fundamental error has been made. It seems to me that several centuries have been mistakenly added into the chronology of Egypt, changing our understanding of when things happened in the ancient world. This has led archaeologists who search for evidence of the Old Testament to look in the right places, but in entirely the wrong time, simply because they're relying on the conventional chronology. The big question, I suppose, is what is chronology? Well, it's the measurement of time. One great scholar called it the backbone of history. Now, try and understand what's going on in the past. We have this thing called the birth of Christ, this line here, if you like. Anything forward from that is modern times, Anno Domini. Now, we're in Anno Domini now. We're in the 1990s. We measure our time from the birth of Christ. But the ancients didn't have that, because they didn't know Christ was going to get born. They had to work a different system. And in fact, they dated the events in the reigns of the kings, by regnal dating, we call it. Just imagine working backwards through time, from the birth of Christ, adding together all the reigns of the different kings, going back through time, until we get to a particular date in a particular king's reign. That's how historians work out the past. The problems arise when some of these stones here, these reigns, these bits of information are actually missing. Then things start to get really complicated. We might have, for instance, overlapping reigns. In that case, the chronological sums could actually be wrong. And this has serious implications for the two great histories of ancient Egypt and the Old Testament. We know a lot about the pharaohs and the biblical characters, but there are almost no fixed dates that enable us to make firm links between them. Working back from the traditional date for Christ's birth, the last secure fixed point comes in 664 BC, when we know the Assyrians invaded Egypt and sacked the holy city of Thebes. From then on, we enter a time of confusion, the third intermediate period, when a number of kings were ruling in the Nile Valley at the same time. In this period, 5 dynasties of Egyptian kings reigned. It starts with the 21st dynasty, which the conventional chronology would have us believe began in 1069 BC. It ends with the fall of the 25th dynasty in 664 BC.